They bought them because they wanted complete control from the lakes all the way to the mouth of the river, which now they have, which is not, doesn't bode well for us because the people that actually are that sit on the directors, there are 10 around the lake areas and 5 down the riverside. So we're kind of not represented equally when it comes to representation.
Sure.
The lake interests are the large, and that's where the growth is taking place, and that's where the people with the money have developed the real estate around the lakes, and that's the problem. The promise was made when my grandfather and father were part of the Gulf Coast Water Company. Back then, they bought water from there, and when the LCRA came down, they said, guys, I think there was like 450,000 acres of rice in Matagorda County, a lot of rice back then. 45,000 acres, not 45,000 acres of rice, not 45,000, and they got that history. So that's what they got for nothing other than those people to say, we'll never let you all not have water. If you'll let us have this rice base, as we call it, for the rice acreage, for the rice that's irrigated here, we'll promise you water. Well, all of these people are all no longer in this earthly scene. So we have nothing in writing other than people's integrity that made this decision a long time ago. Evidently in the world today, I think our business ethics have gone out the window, and we now operate on the outfit as what is the best for the most people, and that's what they're operating on, that where the most people live around those lakes, and they want to keep the water levels high in the lakes because of the fact is they say they're growing, which we realize, but the lakes weren't built for recreation. They weren't built for people to build homes around. They were built to control the floodwaters on the Colorado River, which affected us and still affect us, because if they get the level in those lakes too high, as soon as they get them full of water from one of these big rains, they will open the floodgates and we'll be flooded. That's happened to us over the last, about 4 years ago. The lakes were overfull and the river was running over everybody's piers down here. It actually flooded Wharton, Texas. Wasn't that about 4 years ago, Bob? They had a big flood. The lake levels were too high then. The lakes were full. And we were irrigating, but it just because of the way the rainfalls come, that's what happens to us. And that's the reason they were built, so that didn't. But they want to hold those levels of those lakes about 3/4 full. When they do that, then that leaves us vulnerable to flood and no water to irrigate our crop.
Sure. Now you say that the promise was a verbal promise and that there was no...
There is no written record that anybody can find.
How can you get that record? I mean, obviously the rice base,
Well,
there
is language, and we've even heard LCRA talk about the promise, and they've talked about it themselves, but there's nothing written legally. But I think if it ever came to a test case, it would hold up anywhere, because the fact that they've even said themselves there was a promise made. The current people realize that. In fact, at two of the meetings that I attended, they said, well, there was a promise made, but we don't have nothing in writing.
Sure. What do you want done?
Well, what I'd like for us to get is a portion of the water, what we call firm water, because we need a prorated part of that. You know, this year, for example, the Garwood area is getting all the irrigation water that they had because the man that sold them LCRA, the water rights, actually got not only cash money, a lot of money, but also he wrote in there that they would furnish them water from now on for their rice. So they got all 18,000 acres of their rice water. We need a pro rata share of that, what we call firm water, which is the water in those lakes that belongs to the rice farmers down here that they should actually have, so that in time of drought, they couldn't say you only can get run of the river water or no water. That's what needs to happen for us, so that we always have some water. Because what we depend on is when it doesn't rain and there's no water flowing in the river, we got to have water out of those lakes that's stored water. And right now we have none.
As you've said before, you know, the possibility of if if they do not release downstream water for growing rights for the rice farmers, and they do keep the water levels up high at this point in time, is there any control that will stop a flood coming your way?
The only control is are those lakes that hold the water in so that and release it slowly, rather than get the lakes full and open the floodgates all the way. No, there's not. That's why those lakes were created.
So the LCRA has nothing in place at this point that would actually save the commercial growers if that happens?
Well, it's not the commercial growers, it's the people that live along the river that could be flooded. The idea is that they have succumbed to the pressure by the people that live around the lakes and have built homes around the lakes. They want to keep the lakes full of water, and also the real estate developers. Actually, what it says, if you look, because I had that, and I asked a question one time up there, what does it say when you bought your deed to the property if you built around those two flood control reservoirs? Well, it says is that you are subject to flood in time of high water. It doesn't say anything about keeping the lake levels so you can get your boats down or the piers will stay in the water. It just says that you're subject to flood because you live on a flood control reservoir. That doesn't guarantee you're going to keep the lakes leveled full so you can go out there and sail your boat around.